The green fires burned across Zilani Prime's sky as another city fell to the Krex invaders. High Counselor Vaymora stood in the emergency command center, watching the holographic display show red marks spreading across her world like a disease. Each red mark meant thousands of her people were dead. They broke through the northern shields, reported Commander Talvin, his voice shaking. The biobarriers couldn't stop their ground forces. They're heading for the capital. Vaymora closed her large dark eyes. The Zilani had always been peaceful. For 3,000 years they had solved problems with words, not weapons. Their technology focused on healing and growing things, not destroying them. But the Krex Dominion didn't care about peace talks or trade agreements. They only understood death and conquest. "How many worlds have we lost now?" she asked quietly. 12, confirmed destroyed, Talvin replied. 3 more under attack. Our defense fleets? They're gone, Counselor. The energy weapons barely scratch their armor. Our shields can't stop their kinetic projectiles. The Krex had appeared from the dark space between stars 6 months ago. Their first message was simple: surrender or die. When the Zilani tried to negotiate, the Krex response was to glass an entire moon. They fought like nothing the galaxy had seen before. Their insect-like warriors wore thick armor that adapted to energy weapons. Their ships moved in perfect swarms, overwhelming any defense through sheer numbers. "What about the other species?" Vaymora asked. "The Althari? The Benthic Union?" "The Althari say they're deeply concerned and will monitor the situation," Talvin said bitterly. "The Benthic Union offered to mediate peace talks. No one wants to fight the Krex directly." A new alarm sounded. The tactical display showed Krex dropships entering the atmosphere above the capital city. In 6 hours, maybe less, the Krex would be at the doors of the government complex. The last free Zilani world would fall, and with it their entire species would be wiped out. Vaymora had spent her whole life believing that violence was never the answer, but watching her people die while the galaxy's other peaceful species offered empty words had changed something inside her. Sometimes when faced with monsters, you needed something stronger than diplomacy. "Commander, open the deep space communication array," she ordered. Talvin looked confused. "Counselor, who are we calling? Everyone in the local systems already knows about the attack." "Not everyone," Vaymora said. She walked to the communication console and began entering coordinates that most species pretended didn't exist. "There are stories, whispers from traders who venture into the outer spiral arms. They speak of a species that doesn't run from fights. Warriors from a death world who solve problems with violence first and ask questions later." "The Deathworlders?" Talvin's voice was barely a whisper. "Counselor, those are just stories, scary tales that traders tell." "Are they?" Vaymora activated the long-range transmitter. "Commander, we're about to die. Our children are about to be slaughtered by monsters, who see us as nothing more than prey. If there's even a small chance that these Deathworlders are real, don't we owe it to our people to try?" The communication array powered up, sending its signal toward a small yellow star in the Orion arm. The message was simple, but desperate. "This is High Counselor Vaymora of the Zilani Confederation to any species capable of military intervention. We are under attack by the Krex Dominion. 12 worlds have been destroyed. Millions are dead. We are peaceful people with no military capable of stopping them. If you can hear this message, if you have weapons and warriors, please help us. We are dying." She attached all their tactical data about the Krex, ship designs, weapon specifications, troop movements, everything that might help someone else fight them. Then she added something personal. "We know nothing about your species except the rumors. They say you come from a world so dangerous that it made you into natural warriors. They say you fight wars that would terrify other species. If this is true, we need you now. Our children are hiding in shelters while monsters hunt them. Please." The message shot across space at the speed of light. It would take weeks to reach its destination if anyone was even listening. By then, the Zilani would likely be extinct. But Vaymora had done everything she could. "Counselor," Talvin said softly, "the Krex have landed. Their ground forces are moving toward the government district." Through the command center's windows, Vaymora could see the black shapes of Krex warriors moving through the streets. They were larger than Zilani, covered in chitinous armor that gleamed in the light of burning buildings. They moved with the confidence of predators who had never faced real resistance. "Evacuate all non-essential personnel to the deep shelters," she ordered. "Activate the emergency protocols. If we're going to die, we'll make them work for it." But, even as she spoke, Vaymora knew it was hopeless. The Zilani had energy weapons that barely dented Krek's armor. Their defense robots were designed for crowd control, not warfare. Against an enemy that had conquered dozens of worlds, they might last a few hours. The ground shook as Krek's heavy weapons fired on the outer defenses. Emergency lights bathed the command center in red. Status reports came in from across the city. Shields failing, defensive positions overrun, civilians fleeing in panic. "They're breaking through the main gate," reported a security officer. "Estimated arrival at this position in 90 minutes. Vaymora looked at the star map on the main display. Somewhere out there, her message was traveling through the dark, between stars. Maybe it would reach someone. Maybe someone would care enough to help. Or maybe it would simply fade into the cosmic background radiation. Another voice crying uselessly in the dark. "Counselor," Talvin said, "if the stories are true, if these Deathworlders exist, what makes you think they'll help us? Why would warriors from a death world care about the Zilani?" Vaymora touched the communication console one last time. "Because, Commander, every story about them says the same thing. They don't just fight for themselves, they fight for others who can't fight back. If there's a species out there that would travel across the galaxy to help strangers, I have to believe it's them." The building shook again, closer this time. In the distance, she could hear the high-pitched whine of Krek's weapons and the screams of her people. Soon, the command center would fall. Soon the last free Zilani would be dead or captured. But her message was still traveling through space, carrying with it the desperate hope that somewhere in the galaxy, someone was listening. Someone who wouldn't let the Kreks win. Someone who understood that sometimes the only answer to evil was violence. High Counselor Vaymora of the Zilani Confederation prepared to make her final stand, holding on to the slim hope that help was coming from the stars. Admiral Sarah Chen stared at the translation on her screen for the third time. The message had arrived at Earth's Deep Space Communication Array 6 hours ago, and the linguistics team was still arguing about some of the words. But the basic meaning was clear. Aliens existed, they were being slaughtered, and they were asking humans for help. The signal came from approximately 47 light-years away, reported Dr. Martinez, the project's lead scientist. "The mathematics in their technical data checks out. This isn't a hoax, Admiral, these are real alien communications." "And they're losing a war," Chen said, studying the tactical information the Zilani had sent. The Kreks Dominion's military capabilities were impressive. Adaptive armor, kinetic weapons, overwhelming numbers. Their weapons technology is more advanced than ours in some ways, but they're still getting crushed. "That's because they're not really weapons," said General Harrison, who had flown in from the Pentagon as soon as the news broke. "Look at these energy projectors they call defensive systems. They're designed to disable, not destroy. These Zilani never learned how to kill efficiently." Chen nodded grimly. The alien tactical data painted a picture of a peaceful species, completely unprepared for real warfare. The Zilani had energy shields but no armor. They had stunning weapons but nothing designed to kill quickly. They fought defensively, trying to protect their cities, while the Kreks simply overwhelmed them through brutal aggression. "The question is, what do we do about it?" President Walsh's voice came through the secure communication link from Washington. "This is first contact with an alien species. The diplomatic implications alone." "With respect, Madam President," Chen interrupted, "they're not asking for diplomacy. They're asking for someone to save them from genocide. And according to this data, we might be the only species in the galaxy crazy enough to try." The Zilani message had included information about other spacefaring species. Most were peaceful traders or researchers. A few were isolationist. None had military forces capable of challenging the Kreks. In fact, the message suggested that most galactic civilizations saw warfare as an aberration, something that primitive species did before they learned better. "They called us Deathworlders," Dr. Martinez said quietly. "Apparently that's what the other species call us. They think Earth is so dangerous that it turned us into natural killers." "Are they wrong?" General Harrison asked with a dark smile. "We've been fighting wars for our entire recorded history. We have weapons designed specifically to kill other humans as efficiently as possible. Hell, we still have enough nuclear weapons to sterilize our own planet 10 times over." Chen looked at the star chart showing the location of the Zilani Confederation. 47 light-years wasn't close, but it wasn't impossible. The experimental fusion drives could get a fleet there in about 3 weeks if they pushed hard. The one real question was whether humanity was ready to announce itself to the galaxy by starting an interstellar war. "Admiral," President Walsh said, I'm authorizing you to begin fleet preparations. If we're going to do this, we need to move fast. According to their message, the Zilani might not have much time left. Understood, Madam President. What are our rules of engagement? Protect the Zilani by whatever means necessary. These Kreks want to commit genocide? Show them why Earth is considered a death world. Chen felt a cold smile cross her face. Yes, ma'am. I'll need authorization to recruit volunteers from all service branches. This isn't going to be a standard deployment. You'll have whatever you need, Admiral. Just bring our people home. Within 12 hours, every major military base on Earth was buzzing with activity. The official story was a classified training exercise, but rumors spread quickly through the ranks. First contact: aliens. A rescue mission across interstellar space. The kind of mission that would either make history or end careers. But the response from military personnel was immediate and overwhelming. When Chen put out a call for volunteers for a high-risk deep space mission, she received over 200,000 applications in the first day. Marines, soldiers, sailors, pilots, and support staff all wanted to be part of humanity's first interstellar military operation. We can't take everyone, General Harrison pointed out as they reviewed the applications. The ships can only carry about 50,000 personnel total. Then we take the best, Chen replied. Special forces, veterans, people who've been in real combat. This won't be a training exercise. According to the Zilani data, the Kreks are professional killers. Our people need to be ready for a real war. The fleet assembled in Earth orbit with unprecedented speed. The flagship UES Thermopylae, humanity's newest and largest warship, was joined by 12 heavy cruisers, 30 destroyers, and hundreds of support vessels. Every ship carried weapons designed for space combat: kinetic kill vehicles, nuclear missiles, particle beam projectors, and railguns. But Chen knew that space combat was only part of the equation. If they were going to save the Zilani, they would need to fight on planets as well. The fleet carried atmospheric fighters, assault shuttles, orbital drop pods, and enough ground equipment to support extended planetary operations. The men and women we're taking have never fought aliens before, Colonel Webb pointed out during a planning session. We're making a lot of assumptions about Krek's capabilities based on translated data. Then we prepare for everything, Chen Ai replied. Standard doctrine, maximum aggression, no hesitation. The Zilani tried to be reasonable with these creatures. They tried diplomacy and defensive fighting. All it got them was 12 dead worlds. Dr. Martinez raised a concern that had been bothering the science team. Admiral, what if we're wrong? About this? What if the Zilani aren't as innocent as they seem? What if this is some kind of trap? Chen looked at the alien distress signal one more time. The desperation in the message was clear even through the translation software. These weren't conquerors or manipulators. These were people watching their children die while the galaxy stood by and did nothing. Doctor, maybe they are lying. Maybe this is all an elaborate setup, but I'd rather risk being wrong about helping someone than be wrong about letting genocide happen. If there's a chance we can save an entire species from extinction, we have to try. The final preparations took another week. Weapons were loaded, supplies were stocked, and 50,000 human soldiers said goodbye to families they might never see again. The mission parameters were simple: travel to Zilani space, assess the situation, and stop the Kreks by any means necessary. As the fleet prepared to leave Earth orbit, Chen stood on the bridge of the Thermopylae and looked back at the blue marble. That was humanity's home. In a few hours, they would engage the fusion drives and begin humanity's first journey to another star system. They would either return as heroes who saved an alien species, or they wouldn't return at all. All ships report ready for departure, the navigation officer announced. Take us out, Chen ordered. Maximum acceleration. The Zilani have been waiting long enough. The human fleet turned away from Earth and accelerated into the dark between stars, carrying with it the hope that someone in the galaxy was finally ready to fight back against the monsters. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Theros system and immediately went to battle stations. Admiral Chen studied the tactical display with growing anger. 12 massive Kreks hive ships surrounded the last Zilani world like vultures circling a dying animal. Thousands of smaller fighters swarmed through the space around the planet, hunting down the few remaining Zilani defense platforms. Communications? Any word from the surface? Chen asked. Picking up scattered transmissions, Admiral, the communications officer reported. Most are in their language, but we're getting some translated fragments. The planetary government is still holding out in the capital city, but barely. Through the bridge's main viewer, Chen could see the flashes of weapons fire in the planet's atmosphere. Cities burned across the night side of the world, visible from space as angry red wounds. The Kreks weren't just conquering the Zilani. They were systematically destroying everything they had built. "Sensor report," Chen ordered. 12 Kreks capital ships, each approximately 2 kilometers long, the sensor officer announced. "They're using some kind of biological armor that our computers don't recognize. Energy readings suggest they have both kinetic and directed energy weapons. Fighter count is over 3,000 small craft." The numbers were overwhelming. The human fleet had brought 42 warships against an enemy force 3 times their size. In any normal military calculation, this would be considered suicide. But Admiral Chen had not come 47 light years to run from a fight. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen," she announced over the fleet communication network. "We didn't travel across the galaxy to watch these bastards finish their genocide. Today, humanity introduces itself to the galaxy. Let's make sure they remember us." The Kreks had noticed the human fleet's arrival but seemed confused by their appearance. According to the intercepted communications, they were broadcasting formal challenge protocols, expecting the humans to announce themselves and state their intentions according to some kind of galactic custom. Instead, Admiral Chen gave the order that would change galactic warfare forever. "All ships fire at will." The human fleet's opening attack was unlike anything the Kreks had ever experienced. Kinetic kill vehicles launched from the cruisers accelerated to a significant percentage of light speed before slamming into the Kreks hive ships. The tungsten penetrators, moving at relativistic velocity, punched through the biological armor like it was tissue paper. 3 Kreks capital ships were crippled in the first 30 seconds of combat. Their crews had been preparing for ritualistic challenges and formal declarations of war. They were not ready for an enemy that opened fire without warning and aimed to kill as efficiently as possible. "They're trying to signal us," the communications officer reported. "Some kind of surrender or negotiation request." "Ignore it," Chen ordered coldly. "They didn't negotiate when they were slaughtering civilians. Launch fighters, all weapons free." The space battle quickly turned into a demonstration of human tactical thinking. Where other species fought according to established patterns and honorable traditions, humans adapted their strategy in real time, based on what worked. When Kreks fighters swarmed human ships, the humans used controlled nuclear detonations to clear entire attack formations. When Kreks capital ships tried to retreat, human destroyers rammed them at full acceleration, their crews triggering their reactors to explode at the moment of impact. Captain Rodriguez of the UES Guadalcanal became the first human to destroy an alien capital ship when she piloted her damaged destroyer directly into a Kreks hive ship's engine section. Her final transmission was heard across the fleet. "For the Zilani children, you insect bastards." But the real shock came when the first human ground forces reached the planet's surface. Colonel Marcus Webb led the 82nd Airborne Division in humanity's first combat drop onto an alien world. Their insertion method terrified even the human fleet crews. Orbital drop pods launched directly through the planet's atmosphere with no landing craft support. "This is insane," the Kreks ground commander transmitted to his fleet as he watched the human drop pods streak through the sky like falling stars. "They're committing suicide. No species drops warriors directly from orbit." The Kreks commander learned differently when the drop pods smashed into the ground around the Zilani capital city and disgorged 2,000 human soldiers ready for immediate combat. The 82nd Airborne had been told that alien civilians were being murdered by hostile invaders. That was all they needed to know. The urban warfare that followed introduced the galaxy to human concepts that no other species had ever developed. The Kreks had expected to face Zilani defenders hiding behind energy barriers and shooting stun weapons. Instead, they found themselves fighting humans, who used improvised explosives, coordinated small unit tactics, and weapons designed specifically to kill as efficiently as possible. Sergeant Maria Santos became a legend when she single-handedly held a hospital full of Zilani civilians against an entire Kreks assault squad. Using nothing but her rifle, some medical supplies, and pure human stubbornness, she killed 12 Kreks warriors before reinforcements arrived. When asked later how she did it, her response was typically human. "They were trying to kill kids, so I killed them first." The Kreks had never fought an enemy that refused to follow the rules of civilized warfare. They expected challenges and formal combat. Humans gave them ambushes and explosions. They expected individual duels between champions. Humans gave them coordinated squad tactics that turned every street corner into a potential death trap. High Counselor Vaymora was rescued from the government complex by a team of human Marines led by Lieutenant James Murphy. When she saw her, first human in person, she was shocked by how similar they looked to Zilani. despite coming from a completely different world. But when she watched Murphy and his team systematically clear Krex warriors from the building using techniques that would have been considered war crimes by any civilized species, she began to understand why humans were called Deathworlders. "Your species," she said to Lieutenant Murphy as they reached safety. "You fight like the universe is trying to kill you." Murphy, reloading his rifle while scanning for more targets, gave her a grim smile. "Lady, where we come from it usually is. That's why we're good at killing things that need killing." The Battle of Theros lasted 18 hours. When it was over, the Krex fleet was destroyed or retreating, and the planet's surface was littered with the bodies of alien invaders. Human casualties were surprisingly light: 847 killed in action, 2,341 wounded. Krex losses were estimated at over 50,000 dead. But Admiral Chen knew this was just the beginning. The surviving Krex ships had transmitted detailed information about human combat capabilities to the rest of their empire. Soon, the entire Krex Dominion would know that someone had finally fought back, and they would want revenge. As human medics, treated wounded Zilani civilians and engineers began repairing critical infrastructure, Chen received a priority transmission from the Krex fleet commander who had escaped the battle. The message was simple and direct. "Aberrant Deathworlders, your species will be marked for extinction. We will hunt you across the stars until every human is dead." Admiral Chen's response was broadcast on all frequencies. "Come and try, you insect bastards. We'll be waiting." 3 weeks after the victory at Theros, Admiral Chen stood in the war room aboard the UES Thermopylae, studying intelligence reports that made her both proud and worried. The good news was that human forces had successfully defended 3 more Zilani worlds from Krex attacks. The bad news was that each battle was getting harder as the enemy adapted to human tactics. "They're learning from us," reported Colonel Webb, pointing to the tactical analysis on the main screen. "The Krex are abandoning their ritual combat patterns. They're starting to use coordinated attacks, ambush tactics, even some of our own strategies turned against us." General Harrison, who had arrived with reinforcements from Earth, nodded grimly. "Intelligence reports suggest they're mobilizing their entire empire against us. Every ship, every warrior, every resource they have is being directed toward one goal: wiping out humanity and the Zilani." Chen studied the star charts showing Krex fleet movements. It was clear what was happening. Instead of continuing their expansion into other systems, the Krex were pulling back all their forces to create one massive fleet. The kind of force that could overwhelm any defense through sheer numbers. "How many ships are we talking about?" Chen asked. "Conservative estimate? 200 capital ships, maybe 3,000 fighters, and over 3 million ground troops," the intelligence officer replied. "They're gathering at a major fleet base in the Keth system. It's built into an asteroid field, heavily fortified, and protected by automated defense platforms. They want a final battle," Chen realized. "Winner takes everything." High Counselor Vey Mora, who had been attending human strategy sessions since her rescue, spoke up from her position at the conference table. "Admiral, you've already done more than we could have hoped. You saved our species. Perhaps it would be wise to withdraw your forces before the Krex can bring their full might against you." Chen looked at the Zilani leader with something between respect and pity. Even after watching humans fight to save her people, Vey Mora still thought like a diplomat. She still believed that sometimes the smart move was to run away and live to fight another day. "Counselor, with respect, that's exactly the kind of thinking that got your people slaughtered in the first place," Chen replied. "The Krex have made it clear that they're going to hunt humans across the galaxy until we're all dead. Running away just gives them time to get stronger while we get weaker." "But the odds," Vey Mora protested. 200 ships against your 40. Even with your superior tactics, how can you possibly win?" Colonel Webb grinned, and Chen recognized the expression. It was the same look she'd seen on the faces of human soldiers throughout history when someone told them something was impossible. The look that said they were about to prove the universe wrong through sheer bloody-minded determination. "Ma'am," Webb said to the Zilani counselor, "you're thinking like a civilized person. We're not civilized. We're humans. When someone tells us the odds are impossible, we take that as a personal challenge." Chen made her decision. "We attack Keth Station. Full force, maximum aggression. If the Krex want to gather their entire fleet in one place, we'll save ourselves the trouble of hunting them down one by one." The battle plan that emerged from the next week of preparation would have been rejected by any sane military academy as completely suicidal. The human fleet, now reinforced to 68 ships, would assault a fortified position defended by forces 3 times their size. They would do it without support, without backup, and without any hope of retreat. The approach to Keth Station began with human engineers doing something that no other species had ever attempted in space warfare. They turned the asteroid field itself into a weapon. Using precisely calculated explosive charges, they destabilized the orbits of 17 large asteroids, creating a debris storm that would cripple any formation trying to maneuver in the area. Asteroid charges detonated successfully, reported the demolition team leader. The entire inner system is now a navigation hazard. Any ship moving faster than minimal thrust is going to get shredded. Admiral Chen watched the tactical display as Krex formations, which had been moving to intercept the human fleet, suddenly found themselves trapped in a maze of high-velocity debris. Ships that had been confident in their numerical superiority were now struggling just to avoid collision with chunks of rock moving at thousands of kilometers per hour. Phase 2, Chen ordered. All fighters, commence precision strikes on communication nodes. The human fighter attack was unlike anything the Krex had prepared for. Instead of engaging enemy fighters in traditional dogfights, human pilots ignored the Krex interceptors entirely and focused on destroying command and control systems. They flew through the debris field at speeds that should have been impossible, using the chaotic environment that they had created to avoid enemy fire while systematically destroying the Krex fleet's ability to coordinate. Lieutenant Sarah Kim became the first human pilot to destroy a Krex command ship when she flew her fighter directly through the bridge viewports of a capital ship, ejecting at the last second and relying on her armor's emergency systems to survive in vacuum until rescue arrived. Her actions left an entire Krex battle group blind and unable to communicate with the rest of their fleet, but the real innovation came with the boarding actions. Colonel Webb led 3 battalions of human marines in the first successful assault on a Krex hive ship, using a technique that no other species had ever considered. They boarded multiple ships simultaneously and fought their way toward the engineering sections. The close-quarters combat inside the alien vessels revealed the fundamental difference between human and Krex psychology. The Krex were individually larger and stronger than humans with natural armor and razor-sharp claws. But they fought like hunters, each warrior trying to prove individual dominance. Humans fought like a pack, with each soldier covering his teammates and adapting to the group's movement instinctively. They don't understand squad tactics, Sergeant Rodriguez reported over the communication network as his team cleared another corridor. Each Krex fights alone, even when they're standing right next to each other. They can't coordinate the way we do. The battle reached its climax when Webb's Marines reached the reactor core of the Krex flagship. Instead of simply destroying it, they did something that would have been unthinkable to any other species. They rigged the entire ship to explode in a chain reaction that would take out the 3 vessels closest to it. "Sir," one of Webb's sergeants asked, "what about extraction? How do we get off this thing before it blows?" Webb looked around at his Marines, all of whom were looking back at him with expressions of grim determination. They all knew the answer. They were too deep inside the enemy ship, surrounded by too many hostiles, with too little time to reach the extraction point. "We don't," Webb said simply. "But we're going to take a hell of a lot of them with us." The explosion of the Krex flagship could be seen from the outer edge of the system. The chain reaction destroyed 4 capital ships and damaged a dozen others. The psychological effect on the remaining Krex forces was immediate and devastating. They had never faced an enemy willing to sacrifice themselves not for honor or glory, but simply to kill as many enemies as possible. Hive Queen Zax, the overall Krex commander, transmitted a system-wide broadcast as her fleet began to retreat. The aberrant Deathworlders do not fight like civilized beings. They are madness given form. They are death walking among the stars. All Krex colonies are to be notified. Any human captured alive will receive the highest bounty in Dominion history. Admiral Chen's response was broadcast on the same frequency. "Your Majesty, you started this war by murdering innocent people. We're going to finish it by making sure you never hurt anyone again. Run all you want. We'll follow you to the edge of the galaxy if we have to." The Battle of Keth Station ended with the complete destruction of the largest Krex fleet in history. Human casualties were heavy but acceptable. 8 ships lost, including their crews, and over 3,000 ground troops killed in action. Krex losses were catastrophic. Over half their fleet destroyed, their main base captured, and their reputation as invincible conquerors shattered forever. As human engineers examined captured Krex technology and interrogated prisoners, one thing became clear. The war was far from over. The Krex Empire was vast, with dozens of worlds and billions of warriors. But for the first time in their history, they were afraid, And as any human military historian could have told them, there are few things more dangerous than making humans angry and then running away. 6 months after the Battle of Keth Station, the war had spread across half the galaxy. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of her flagship, now orbiting the Krex homeworld of Ketra Nul, and watched the final act of the most brutal conflict in galactic history unfold below. The planet's surface was covered in hive cities that stretched for thousands of kilometers, home to over 10 billion Krex civilians and warriors. Somewhere in those twisting structures was Queen Empress Vex Kala, the supreme ruler of the Krex Dominion, and the creature ultimately responsible for the attempted genocide of the Zilani. Final intelligence report, Admiral, Colonel Webb announced. He had survived the destruction of the Keth fleet base and now wore the scars of a dozen boarding actions. Every Krex military asset in the Empire has been pulled back to defend the homeworld. We're looking at the largest defensive force in their recorded history. Chen studied the tactical displays showing enemy positions. The Krex had learned from their defeats and abandoned their traditional combat doctrines entirely. They were using human-style tactics now, coordinated attacks, defensive positions, even guerrilla warfare. But they were fighting for their homes and their families, which made them more dangerous than they had ever been. What's our force composition? Chen asked. 68 human ships, 43 Zilani vessels with hybrid weapon systems, and contingents from 12 other species that the Krex had conquered, General Harrison reported. Total personnel, approximately 200,000 ground troops, representing 19 different worlds. The coalition that had formed around humanity was unprecedented in galactic history. Species that had never fought together, many of whom had never fought at all, were now united by a single purpose: ending the Krex threat forever. The Zilani had provided biotechnology that enhanced human weapons. The crystalline Althari had contributed shield generators. Even the peaceful Benthic Union had sent warships, their first military action in over 1,000 years. But Chen knew that the real strength of the coalition wasn't in their numbers or technology. It was in what humans had taught them, that sometimes violence was not just acceptable but necessary to protect the innocent. High Counselor Vey Mora, now serving as the coalition's diplomatic representative, joined Chen on the bridge. The Zilani leader had changed dramatically over the past months. The gentle diplomat who had once believed that all conflicts could be solved with words now wore armor and carried weapons. The war had taught her, as it had taught many others, that evil sometimes only understood force. Admiral, Vey Mora said, I've received a communication from Queen Empress Vex Kala. She's offering to negotiate a ceasefire. Chen looked at the alien leader with cold eyes. After 6 months of chasing her across the galaxy while she tried to rally every Krex warrior to fight us, now she wants to talk? She claims that the war has gone on long enough, that both sides have suffered enough casualties. She's proposing a territorial division. The Krex keep their core worlds and they promise never to expand into coalition space again. And what do you think, Counselor? Vey Mora was quiet for a moment, looking down at the planet where millions of Krex civilians lived in fear of the approaching human fleet. 6 months ago, she would have immediately supported any chance for peace. Now, after seeing what the Krex had done to her people in dozens of other worlds, she understood that some enemies could never be trusted to keep their promises. I think, she said finally, that you humans have a saying about teaching old dogs new tricks. The Krex have been conquerors for thousands of years. A piece of paper won't change what they are. Chen nodded approvingly. The war had been as much about teaching the galaxy's peaceful species how to think strategically as it had been about defeating the Krex. Exactly. We don't negotiate with genocidal empires. We end them. The invasion of Ketra Nul began with orbital bombardment of military targets, but quickly evolved into the largest urban warfare operation in galactic history. Human forces, supported by their alien allies, fought their way through hive cities that had been turned into fortress complexes. Every street corner was defended, every building was a potential stronghold, and every step forward cost lives. But the coalition forces had something the Krex couldn't match. They were fighting not just for victory, but for justice. Zilani biotechnicians worked alongside human combat engineers to develop new weapon systems. Althari shield specialists protected human assault teams as they cleared buildings. The war had created something that had never existed before, a truly unified galactic military force. Sergeant Maria Santos, now a decorated veteran of multiple campaigns, led a mixed human Zilani squad in the assault on the Imperial Palace complex. As they fought their way through corridors filled with Krek's royal guards, she couldn't help but think about how much had changed since that first desperate battle at Theros. Santos called her Zalani partner, Talven. There's a barricade ahead. Looks like they're making a final stand. Santos looked at the alien who had become one of her closest friends over the past months. Talven had been a government clerk before the war, someone who had never held a weapon in his life. Now he was a seasoned soldier who could clear a room as efficiently as any human marine. Just like we practiced, Santos replied. You take left, I'll take right. Everyone else provides covering fire. The final battle took place in the Queen Empress's throne room, where Vex Kala had gathered her most elite guards for a desperate last stand. But when Admiral Chen and her escort team breached the chamber's defenses, they found something unexpected. The Krek's ruler was alone. Queen Empress Vex Kala was massive even by Krek standards, covered in chitinous armor that bore the scars of countless battles. Her forearms held weapons that could have cut through human power armor, and her compound eyes reflected an intelligence that had guided one of the galaxy's most successful military empires. So, she said in accented but understandable English, the Deathworlders have come to finish what they started. Your Majesty, Chen replied, keeping her weapon trained on the alien monarch. You started this war when you decided to commit genocide. We're just here to make sure you never get the chance to do it again. I offer you single combat, Vex Kala announced, throwing down her weapons. Champion against champion, as is traditional among warriors. If you defeat me, the Kreks will surrender. If I defeat you, your forces withdraw from our space. Chen looked around the throne room at the bodies of Krek's guards who had died defending their ruler. Good soldiers, she had to admit, even if they served an evil cause. The offer of single combat was probably meant to preserve some kind of honor, to let the Queen Empress die as a warrior rather than be executed as a war criminal. But Chen hadn't come 47 light years and lost thousands of good people just to play by alien rules of honor. Your Majesty, she said, I'm not here as your champion. I'm here as an exterminator. You're a threat to every peaceful species in this galaxy, and threats get eliminated. The single shot from Chen's sidearm ended the Krek's empire. 3 hours later, Admiral Chen stood in the Coalition Command Center as reports came in from across the planet. Krek's military forces were surrendering en masse. Civilian populations were offering no resistance. The war that had started with a desperate plea for help was finally over. Casualty reports, General Harrison announced. Coalition forces, 34,000. Killed in action, 89,000 wounded. Krek's military losses are estimated at over 2 million dead. High Counselor Ve Mora looked up from the communication console where she had been coordinating with the other coalition species. Admiral, I'm receiving surrender offers from 17 Krek's colony worlds. They're all asking for the same thing, protection from human retaliation. Chen almost smiled at the irony. 6 months ago, the Kreks had been the galaxy's most feared military force. Now they were begging for protection from the very species they had tried to exterminate. Tell them, Chen said, that any Krek's world that agrees to coalition oversight and permanent military restrictions will be protected. Any world that refuses will be considered a continuing threat. And what about their civilians? Vemora asked. Billions of Kreks who had nothing to do with the military's decisions? Chen looked out at the smoking ruins of the hive city below. Those billions of civilians had lived comfortable lives while their military slaughtered innocents across the galaxy. They had benefited from conquest and genocide even if they hadn't personally pulled the triggers. But that was what separated humans from the Kreks. Humans could be ruthless when necessary, but they didn't make war on children and non-combatants. They fought to protect the innocent, not to punish entire species. Full humanitarian aid, Chen ordered. Food, medical supplies, reconstruction assistance. We're going to show the galaxy that there's a difference between justice and revenge. The war's end came not with a formal surrender ceremony, but with a simple document signed aboard the UES Thermopylae. The Treaty of Ketra Nul established humanity as the galaxy's first protective species, empowered to intervene in conflicts where genocide or mass atrocities were being committed. It created the Galactic Defense Coalition, with Earth as its headquarters and Admiral Chen as its first supreme commander.